Nick.
Yes, Steve-O.
Guess what we're talking about today?
All about menopause today, Steve-O.
Scary topic.
Yep.
Some people sail through it, some people struggle with it.
Yeah.
We've got bad news and we've got good news at the end. So wait till the end. You've got some great suggestions as a practitioner to help women deal with menopause.
Yeah, all about weight loss, how you can improve your weight loss if you're having trouble with that and all the other issues that come along with it. So we talk all about what to do and, so stay tuned. It's really
Let's get into it.
Hey everyone, welcome to the ATP Project. You're with your hosts, Steve and Nick.
How are you, Nick?
I'm good, Steve. How are you?
Really good. Today's an interesting topic.
Today's a big topic, and it's a topic that we haven't ever done before.
And we were just talking before camera about the certain populations, people, from vets to people in their 50 who don't know what this thing is all about.
And worse, 50% of the population cannot, if they stay on this earth, cannot avoid this.
50%?
They will happen to 50% of the population in their lifetime.
You are 100% right, around the age of 52. So there's a good way to remember it.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about? What's the topic?
Okay, so we're talking about menopause. Now, before everyone switches off and goes, oh, God, one, cringy, and two, don't care, because I'm not there or I'm a male.
Yeah.
If you're a male, you have a woman in your life, whether that be a mother or a sister or a girlfriend or a daughter or something.
Oh, I've got a mother, sister, girlfriend and a wife.
Well, there you go.
I'm joking. Just joking. That's
that old chestnut.
Yes.
So you probably should listen in because you can help your partner or family member or whoever it may be. And if you're a female, even if you're in your 20s, you're even more so should listen in now because you can do a lot of things to really prevent some of the things that happen from being worse than they possibly could be, if that makes sense. So,
absolutely. And you mentioned
everyone should really listen to this.
Absolutely. And menopause, we're mentioning a lot. We're going to be mentioning a fair bit of bad news at the start.
Yeah.
And you got to listen to the end because that's when we're going to start talking about the good news and treatments. Because if you live long enough as a woman, you will get this. Yes. It's the end. It's like
it's inevitable.
Being a man, and we talked about this before about impotence. I mean, you're going to get it at some age if you live long enough.
Yes.
Now, everyone's going to say, no, not me. But you. And menopause, you run out of eggs.
Yeah.
You're born with a certain amount of eggs. You screep one a month, you run out.
Physiologically, you can't stop it.
No.
No matter how hard you try. And lots of women do try to stop it.
Yeah. You can't stop it. And it's associated with a lot of stuff. Now, we've got a chart here. I don't know where you want to start with this thing. We've got a chart of the symptoms that are associated with menopause. You want to start there? We're going to start with I
thought I would start with the reason that we're doing this is because we have had requests because we've asked it a little bit. And two, it's really misunderstood and it seems to be a really taboo subject that nobody really wants to talk about in public. But we were just talking before we started recording that there's people just don't know about it. Some people don't even know what menopause is. So we wanted to go into all the physiological things that happen through menopause. A lot of bad news.
It is. It starts bad.
There's not heaps of great
news. But if you listen, you'll understand that we can do something about all this.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot we can do. So if you're going to switch off, don't, because it can be really, really interesting for someone in your life or when you get there, if you're not already there.
Yep, fair enough. Okay, so every woman goes through this. Average age, 52 in this study. I've seen 51.
It used to be 51, but it can be, it can actually be anywhere from 40. You can have early onset menopause, which is actually some women in their 30s can have that. But you can have it anywhere from early 40s up until mid-50s, even late 50s for some. My grandmother was 59, I think.
Really?
They actually put her in menopause so she wasn't going there herself.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, so you can – so it's a very, very wide span of time that you can actually –
There's a genetic issue called Fragile X syndrome where women go into menopause in their late 30s.
Yes.
So there's, when we say it's 52, it's not like, it's my birthday, happy birthday, or menopause.
It doesn't. It
doesn't work like you're born with women are born with a certain amount of eggs. After the age of about 12 to 14, they secrete one a month on average, and then they run out.
That's right. And
that's it.
Generally, and I say generally, but it's less so now that I see it, but it used to be very similar to when your mum went through menopause is sort of when you would go through. taking away variables such as, chemical menopause and things like that, which we can talk about, or other issues. But generally, if you're going through natural menopause, it usually is around roughly the same time as your mother.
Yep. Okay.
Used to be, but sometimes they can be a bit different.
And for the men out there, if you're going to think switching off, as Nic said, you've got women in your life, they're going through this, and it can be distressing for a lot of people, very distressing for some.
Yeah, really.
And it has a whole lot of changes in the body. If you don't understand it, you're not being a good partner, in my opinion. So you've got to understand this.
Yeah, and a lot of divorces happen in the 50s.
Oh, yeah.
And there could menopause be part of it? And I did see some studies that showed that, yes, menopause is a big part of it, but it's not actually the men giving it's the women wanting the divorces, not the men.
Women initiate about, I think, 70 to 80% of divorce in Australia.
There you go. So in menopause, they're like, they're just done. So I don't know. Not everyone, not every woman, obviously.
Wow.
Lots of supportive men out there as well.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And so we start off, and we've got the stages here, and we've got, you've got the reproductive stage, which is, women in their 20s and, late teens, they're reproductive.
Yeah, so from first period on, you're then fertile. So whether that be 14 or 12 or however old.
That varies a lot too.
Yeah, generally, again, average, and I do air quotes for average, is around about 12. If you're moving into, and this is about menopause, not cycles, but if you're moving more into more 16, 17, then there's generally underlying issues there you have to look at. And some girls even 11, which is super young, which is not an uncommon thing, and 10. Yeah. Yeah.
So, some women are in their late teens, as you said. One of the most common causes is PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, which delays menstruation. So, and even when you've been menstruating and you can develop PCOS, you often stop menstruating.
Yeah, well, it's very sporadic.
All right, so let's get into this menopause thing. When did it all start? And we start off, and it's called perimenopause.
Yeah, so I think there is a little bit of confusion about what is perimenopause. Am I in menopause? Am I perimenopausal? What's happening? So perimenopause can be anywhere from a few years before menopause to up to 12 to 14 years before you can start to go into perimenopause.
Wow, okay.
And that's when your cycle starts to shift a little bit. You start to have a little bit of a slow decline in your progesterone levels. And that can show up with things like missed periods or longer or shorter cycles than what's normal for you. So any sort of changes that, happen outside of what's been normal for you for a long time can indicate there could be starting to be some shifts in those hormonal profiles. Yeah. So it can be for, quite a few years.
Yep.
And that's when you can get, a lot of the mood disorders, and you can some women can start to have flushes and night sweats and things like that during the perimenopausal time as well. And then menopause, the actual definition of menopause is 12 months without a period.
Right. So that's menopause when it's not
12 months.
Yeah. It's not skipping a period.
No.
It's 12 months. That's interesting.
Yeah. And some women might go 11 months and 2 weeks without a period and then get one. And so then you have to start the clock all over again. Now I have to wait another 12 months to see whether it comes again.
Right.
So, but 12 months without a period generally is when you are considered to be menopausal.
Sure.
Yeah. And then, well, really, to be honest, postmenopausal, because it's done. The menopause, being in menopause, is kind of that transition. Yeah. And then you come out the other side and it's done.
Yep.
And then you're essentially postmenopausal then. So, but you still have a lot of the symptoms. A lot of women do.
Symptoms. Symptoms then. What are the symptoms?
Oh, they can go on for years. Some women in their 60s still get menopausal symptoms.
Yeah.
So we wanted to go through all the symptoms and the underlying drivers a lot of these.
Yes.
And I think the big one that a lot of women are interested in is the weight gain.
We got a paper on that.
The weight gain. And that's really interesting. And it's not guaranteed, or like it's just a rite of passage, or not even a rite of passage, that you will have weight gain. Yeah. You don't have to gain weight during menopause, and we'll explain why and what you can do about it.
Yes.
But that's a big thing. And then the hot flushes and the night sweat is another really big factor for women that they really struggle with. So we'll talk about all of that.
Well, we've got a chart here on the symptoms, and they're quite devastating for a lot of people. The first one I'm looking at here is the increase of cardiovascular risk.
Yes. So
that's
pretty big. So leading up to menopause, women have a much less risk of cardiovascular disease, obviously, compared to men. But then postmenopausally, we then catch up to the men. So that then becomes a really big problem for women, and that's because we lose the estrogen, and we can talk about that. But yes, that's a really significant factor.
Women are protected with the hormones that they're blessed with. When you ovulate, you secrete large amounts of progesterone, and you have more estradiol, which is a potent estrogen, which men don't want, but women love.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if you had too much testosterone, it'd be bad for you, but testosterone for me is, you know, like, oh yeah, let's do it. And, you know, even when I've taken more testosterone, you know, in an injectable form in the early days, I did that, you feel better. You know, you give that to a woman and they don't feel well.
No.
So, so increased cardiovascular risk. The other one here is another very important one is you've got higher rates of osteoporosis.
Yeah, so bone loss really significant. As soon as you lose that estrogen, which is very protective of our bones and helps to build our bones, you can have accelerated bone loss if you don't take steps to protect that.
And that's an important issue.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're going to get this stuff.
No.
You can, there too, and I call them modifiable risk factors because they're modifiable.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about the modifications later, but let's just keep going with the bad news.
Yeah.
Another one is depression.
Yeah, really common.
Yeah.
Depression and anxiety.
Yes.
I see a lot. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we know that estrogen is required to turn tryptophan into serotonin.
Yeah.
Serotonin, you know, keeps blood vessels tight. This is where you get the vasomotor, you know, the flushing or flashing, whatever you're from America. We talked about
flashing,
that. Yeah, flashing. Because the blood vessels dilate dramatically because you get this weird levels of estradiol. It goes up and down, it fluctuates, and that's not good.
Yeah.
So that's where you get the mood changes from. You get a decrease in libido.
Yeah, that's really common for menopausal women. It's one of the biggest complaints I hear from clients is libido.
Well, as we'll see when we talk about hormones, but hormones do typically drop dramatically as you go through menopause, particularly estradiol, which is a potent estrogen. I'm going to get this right. You got E2, estradiol, estrone, which is E1, and you've got estriol, I think, which is E3. So I could get that. But you've got these three different types of estrogen, but estradiol is the most important one, and it drops dramatically.
It does, yes.
So real bad. Another one that's not often discussed is urinary incontinence.
Yeah, really common.
That can happen.
That's really common, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you get sleep disturbance as well.
Yep.
And I remember my mother getting this menopause, and she said, I have to change the sheets at night because she'd come out in sweats and all this sort of thing. She's now in the 80s and past all that, but I remember that part of it, but distinctively. And that's because, of course, serotonin levels drop because the estradiol levels drop. Serotonin makes melatonin, so you get this terrible sleep disturbance. Another one is weight gain.
Yeah, this is probably the biggest complaint of women going through menopause and post-menopause. Really, really common. And we're going, as we said at the beginning, we're going to talk all about the mechanisms and how you can avoid it or reduce the amount of weight that you put on.
That's modifiable. That doesn't mean that you have a birthday and you put on 3 kilos.
Yeah.
It's modifiable.
Yeah.
People, the way this happens is women lose the protective hormones, and all of a sudden, of course, if they don't do anything different, they will put on weight.
Yeah.
But what we're going to suggest later is we do something different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, and it goes without saying, reduced quality of life is the other symptom.
Yeah.
And that's sad.
Yeah.
It's very sad.
Yeah.
Because as you said, every woman goes through this if they live long enough. And this was published in the Current Opinion of Food Science. So just so you know where the paper comes from. Yeah. So it's really interesting. Now, do you want to talk about, where do you want to go here? Do you want to talk about the hormonal shifts?
Yeah, so we can talk about what happens to your hormones as you go through from perimenopause to menopause and beyond. So the main players are your estrogen and your progesterone, and your female sex hormones primarily. I mean, we have obviously the testosterone as well comes into play, so sex hormones. There are other hormones involved, but they're not sex hormones, so your cortisol, oxytocin, DHEA, they all shift as well.
Dramatically, yeah.
But the main one's your estrogen and progesterone. Yeah. So as you're moving through perimenopause, with progesterone, it just goes on a slow decline. Yeah. It doesn't go up and down. It just literally, as you get closer to menopause, it just declines further down.
Absolutely.
But your estrogen can go up and down and wildly, like really high, then dump, then high, then dump. And that's why women, they get these mood shifts and they really struggle with a lot of things. So that perimenopausal phase, I would be inclined to say, is probably is worse than menopause as far as those fluctuations.
Absolutely.
And eventually the fluctuations will become less and less, and then menopause, they're pretty much tanked out. So you're not producing much estrogen or progesterone at all, and that's where we'll explain why a lot of these symptoms come on from there.
So if you're doubting all this, that you don't go measure estrogen with the bloods, because that, as you see, it goes up and down. You could be hit at a peak or a low, and it could be anything.
Yeah.
So what they tend to measure is FSH, follicle stimulating hormone.
Yes.
And that's dramatically increased.
Yes.
And what that is the body's response in the brain to go, hang on, I'm not ovulating. Come on. And it's like a crop hitting a horse to run faster.
Yeah. So it's hitting the ovaries, but the ovaries are done.
Yeah.
So they're not producing any estrogen, because that's where women produce the majority of their estrogen.
Yep.
We do produce it in other areas. So the brain's basically going, because FSH signals the ovaries to release hormone, release estrogen. So it's literally, as I've said before, the higher the number, the louder the brain is screaming, come on. So that's how you can measure how close you are to menopause. And generally an FSH of 40 or above is menopause.
Oh, okay.
Generally, yeah.
That is pretty high.
Yeah, so don't measure your estrogen, because it's too, unless you're tracking it throughout the month every day, then FSH is really what you want to be measuring. Yeah. And LH to a degree. LH shows ovulation, so that's a really good one to measure if you're not ovulating. And as you're getting closer to menopause, you can have a lot more anovulatory cycles. So you're looking at your LH as well, and if that's going up.
And I want to ask you about the measurement of anti-Mullern hormone, which is the best indicator of follicular reserve too.
Yeah.
So that's another important one.
Yeah,
that while you're getting a blood test, that can be one, and that measures how much reserve you've got.
Yeah.
So if I've got a friend of a friend who was in her 40s and was wondering if she could fall pregnant. She hadn't had a kid yet, and her AMH came back as 3.8, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
It's, it's usually below 1 after 40, or, it can be. So that was good news for her.
Yeah.
But that's how much reserve you've got. So AMH, if you can remember that, FSH, AMH, a bit different.
Yes.
But they're good markers.
Yeah. So
so that's very interesting. Yeah. So what we know, okay, so let's say that we're in the perimenopausal phase, and we've got high levels of FSH, and the cycles are, a bit all over the place because you're running out of eggs, you've still got some coming out. And this is where I think the problems are, because it's all over the place.
All over the place, yeah. And that's where you can get those wild mood shifts and the basometer symptoms, so the heat and the sweating, night sweats and things like that. So what was your question, Steve?
I was just talking about the process. And we've got here a nice chart published in the Principles of Gender-Specific Medicine, and it talks about what happens to your hormones after you go through menopause. And look at the chart for FSH. It goes from low to super high.
Through the roof, yeah.
But estradiol goes from perimenopause to postmenopause, drops like a stone there.
Yeah, it does.
And I mean, that's terrible. The estrogen drops a bit too. And a few other hormones drop too. But what I found the most interesting of this chart was testosterone.
Yes, testosterone doesn't move much.
No, it doesn't move much. Now, when a woman drops estradiol, their prominent hormone, the sex hormone binding globulin that normally binds it up, about 98% of it, drops as well.
Yeah.
And that, of course, leads to, and this is going to sound weird to people, I hope people are following along at home, but you get a relative increase in free or unbound testosterone.
Yeah.
So these women get higher levels of testosterone available to the body.
Yeah.
And this is bad for women.
It can be really bad for women, as in like symptom-wise, because, and even if their testosterone doesn't go up a lot, there's still that imbalance, the ratio. So we talk about female hormone ratio. So estrogen to progesterone should be balanced. If you have low progesterone, you will have symptoms of estrogen dominance, even though your estrogen may not be high.
Yes.
So it's the same with the testosterone, because now you've lost the estrogen and the progesterone.
Yeah.
There's nothing opposing the testosterone, so you then can have testosterone dominant symptoms.
Yeah.
So, and that can be, for a man, great. You wouldn't write higher testosterone, but for a woman, no. You can have more weight around the middle, and the waist changes because your sort of profile is more of a male profile in a way. So you lose that hourglass figure. You can have really low mood, you can have fatigue, you can have hair loss, you can have lots of these types of symptoms.
And I hate to bring this up, but you also can get sexual dysfunction as a woman.
You can.
We'll say vaginal dryness, but you can get these symptoms and, of course, a reduced libido.
Yes.
So, just that in itself can cause problems in a relationship because, thought patterns go, I'm not interested in my husband anymore. I don't care about sex and all this sort of stuff. And there was a movie written about this, Hope Springs, with Meryl Streep, one of my favourite actresses in it.
Okay, I haven't seen it.
Oh,
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
It's an older couple, Meryl Streep, and they play a couple that have grown apart as they've aged, lost interest in sex and all that. And Steve Carell is the therapist and tries to bring them back together and gives them. And it's a comedy.
Oh, okay.
But it's a little bit true too. You know what I mean? Like most comedies, it's.
Yeah.
And it's just how they just they sleep in different rooms, and it's just really interesting. But because as a man ages too, their testosterone declines. So this is an interesting transition because for women, it's not like a man where a man will lose testosterone 1 to 3% a year and it get used to it. Women, it sort of falls off a little bit of a cliff.
It does, yeah.
And this is where treatments have been. They go, wow, we need to treat that. And they'll give HRT, and we'll talk a bit about that later. Not a lot about that because
it's controversial.
It's very controversial because in 2003 there was a big study on it.
Yes,
and they found that horse hormones, which is what they typically give women. I know it sounds weird, but they actually cause problems in women. Surprise, surprise.
There was a lot of flawed studies.
Yes.
And there's something called the Women's Health Initiative.
That's the one, 2003.
And that's where a lot of this stuff came about HRT causes heart attacks and strokes and things like that. And they've shown that it was a completely flawed. Yes, they were using horse urine, pregnant horse.
Pregnant horse urine, which is a brand name Premarin.
Yeah, exactly.
Premarin. Pregnant mare urine, which is a really, look, okay, all right. Do your hormones drop? How about we give you back the ones that you've lost, the human ones?
The human ones,
But no, let's give another animal's ones because that's just cheap or whatever.
Yeah.
It's disturbing, isn't it?
It is. So should we talk about HRT later or should we talk about it now while we're talking about it?
Well, we can talk about it now because this is what most people go on.
Yeah, and it's, as I said, it's really controversial and people get really emotionally driven about this.
I can give you pros and cons.
Yes. Okay, give me
pros are reduces symptoms.
Yes.
Which can be very distressing for women.
Yeah.
And women go, look, all right, there's side effects of this shit, but hey, I'm feeling better. I now can sleep. I now don't have the flushes. And, that's quite distressing for a lot of people.
Yeah.
The side effects are well known now of strokes and heart attacks and cancers. But, people have to weigh up their quality of life with those risks.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because, you can have a woman that comes to do the holistic way to treat, but there's sometimes that genetics or other variables where sometimes things don't improve enough to have her health get back on track. So say bone loss is accelerated for whatever reason, and then the holistic way isn't helping as much as it should in this particular person, and it can work really well. We'll talk about that. Yeah. And even cardiovascular issues. So someone, say, that has familial hypercholesterolemia, and then we'll talk a little bit about when your estrogen drops, it can really, as we said, impact your cardiovascular system and your LDL can shoot up.
Yep.
So somebody like that, we're trying, they get it mainly under control. The estrogen drops off, it shoots up again despite some of the herbs and supplements. So for those women, HRT is a really good option because their health is at risk and these women get scared about, well, what do I do? So, and there's so much stigma about HRT, but it's so different now and there's so many studies out there now showing that it's very safe, like the risk is quite low. Compared to quality of life for these women that need something.
Yes.
And this isn't a reason, this is the other thing I see in clinic is women that don't want to change their lifestyle, which we're going to talk about everything that you need to do to manage the hormones. They don't want to change anything, so they go on HRT. But it's not the answer and it doesn't fix things because in this country we don't, unfortunately, restore levels to what they were for a cycling woman. They give just enough to, stop the bone loss and help the cardiovascular system health. But they're not restoring them to premenopausal levels. So you're still going to have issues. Yeah. So you need to get all the other stuff we're going to talk about on point. And then if you really need HRT, then go down that route.
It's kind of my philosophy too, with when they used to treat menopause, not as many as you do, because I used to see a lot of guys in clinic because I was a guy. And there weren't many guys
now as well, actually.
Yeah, you see a lot of guys.
Yeah, I do.
I think guys are a little bit more open now to talking about their health, which is a bloody about time.
It's great, yeah.
Men are terrible at looking after their health. What I found about HRT is there's two types. There's the standard one, and then there's BHRT.
Yeah.
Bioidentical hormone therapy. I've got a friend of a friend of mine's partner, wife now, who takes bioidentical hormones, and it's remarkable.
Yeah.
And she went through slightly earlier.
Yeah.
And she takes, and it's very interesting because you're not really supposed to take, not many hormones you're supposed to take orally.
No.
Because it affects the liver dramatically. Yeah. And so there's creams which sound like they're not as effective, but they are.
Creams
they're absorbed.
And even patches as well.
Because you mentioned cholesterol before, and hormones are made from cholesterol. All the ones we're talking about, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, they're all made from cholesterol, and it's fat soluble.
Yeah.
So, it's very interesting. So, if you wanted to match a cycle with bioidentical HRT, you take estrogen sort of changing doses because the normal cycle, and progesterone only the last 2 weeks-ish.
Yes.
And it's quite remarkable that's the way that women have evolved to have these hormones at these varying levels anyway.
Yeah, and I think a lot of women, and that's the other thing, not to bash all doctors, but some doctors don't know how to prescribe HRT properly, or MHT, as they call it, menopausal hormonal therapy.
Oh, right. I've never heard that
MHT,
term.
yeah.
There you go.
They don't know how to prescribe it properly. So if you're going to do a HRT, MRT, BHRT, then find a practitioner who knows the ins and outs of how to prescribe, because it's very nuanced. So you want to be really careful. And the other thing, a lot of women think that bioidentical HRT is natural. But it's not natural. It's still manufactured in a lab, but it's much safer.
You don't extract it from human women wandering the planet. So they stick a needle in their ovaries and pump out. No, it does not work. It's made. It's completely. That's what we call bioidentical.
Yeah.
But it's not natural.
No, it's not natural.
And so it's very interesting because there's conflict over that, because it depends on how bad you're getting these symptoms that we discussed, which are devastating in a lot of times. To which way do you get? Okay, I want to get hormones. How do I get them? And which ones and all this sort of stuff.
There's a lot in it. So that's why you really need to find a practitioner. I can't prescribe hormones. I'm not a medical doctor.
Yeah.
So somebody who really knows what they're doing, because otherwise it can cause a lot of issues.
Yes.
You can feel worse than you actually did before you even took them. So
they're a tricky field.
So and as I said, they've really been vilified and all that sort of stuff. So women are just nervous. They don't know what to do. There's so much misinformation out there about it. So I really need to do research on that.
Right. So I guess going back a little bit into what does estrogen do in a woman's body? Like, why do you need it? Like,
okay, so we talk about everything that the estrogen does, and then you'll know that you can get a gauge of what happens when
when you run out of it.
Yeah. So things like metabolic homeostasis.
Yes. So
estrogen's very anabolic. It's kind of like testosterone for men, very anabolic. So, and it helps to balance our blood sugars, keep our insulin nice and sensitive, all that sort of thing. So it's very good for that. Cell proliferation and death. So apoptosis, programmed cell death. We need to have that cell turnover.
Glad you said that, because people think cell death and they think, I don't want my cells to die.
Yeah,
you do. Some of them do.
Yeah, some of them are not working properly. Get rid of them, because they're the ones that, if they hang around, can become cancerous.
And you mentioned the term apoptosis. That's programmed cell death. And cancer cells are literally immortal, and that's the problem with them.
That's right.
So what else?
Liver protein expression.
Well, we want that.
Which is we'll talk about liver and gallbladder, because there's a lot of changes that happen to our organs.
Yep.
Lipid metabolism.
Yes.
So that's why when we lose our estrogen, a lot of times LDL, cholesterol can shoot up. Well, and women haven't changed anything.
No, they haven't changed. And you've got to remember, LDL's made in the liver.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks this evil stuff that comes from the eggs, or I don't know what devil or whatever, but it's made in the liver to take cholesterol out to the tissues to be turned into estrogen. And if you're not making it, it builds up.
That's right.
It's like a guy delivering bricks to a house to build a house, and there's no builders there to bricky layers. The bricks build up.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
That's right. Exactly.
Okay.
So that energy balance.
Oh, yeah.
So it helps with energy production and that sort of thing. So that's why women in the menopause, they can get really tired. That's part of it. Glucose metabolism. Now, this is really important because we're going to talk about the weight gain. This is a really big part of that with the glucose metabolism. So we really lose that insulin sensitivity. And so a lot of the weight gain is because of insulin resistance development and that metabolic syndrome type picture. So that's really important. Immune and cardiovascular health. We talked about the cardiovascular, but even immune function, estrogen really important there.
Sure.
Gonadotropin feedback, obviously. So that's helping with the production through the gonads. Reproduction, obviously.
Of course,
that. Brain neuronal development.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine being so good for your brain and then running out of it.
Yeah, and the memory loss and the brain fog is really significant for a lot of women.
Yeah.
Some women don't get it, and a lot of women get it really significantly.
We had some baby brain when people have a baby and their brains go, all right, it could be lack of sleep and the kids keep them up. But also, typically women don't ovulate after they give birth.
Yeah.
Now, don't use this as a contraceptive method, but please.
I've had people that have had babies and then babies.
I know people, but you typically don't ovulate for a while. And so you go into this, quote, little mini menopause because you're making so much prolactin because you're making so much milk to feed your current baby. So there is, and that's what happens to these women's brain. Now, it's temporary because their ovulation comes back. But imagine menopause. It just happens.
It's a huge problem for a lot of women. It's a huge problem. And it can be quite scary if you start to lose your memory.
I mean, I've got papers here with these charts on what happens to your brain as a woman.
Well, your brain shrinks for one.
Yeah.
Without the estrogen, it actually shrinks.
Yep.
The neuro pathways change.
Yep.
So generally, it passes for a lot of women. So they might spend a few years with like, I just can't remember. I can't get my words.
Yep.
I know what I want to say, but I just can't get the word, or I can't remember things. Generally, it can pass within a few years. If it doesn't, then there could be underlying issues. And there's a lot of women with the ApoE gene. They're more predisposed to this. And
that's apolipoprotein E4 gene. Yeah, that's the bad one.
That's the bad one.
It's your boyfriend's got that one.
Oh, yeah. We talked about this. Chris Hemsworth, my boyfriend.
We just had to bring it up again because someone...
some people might not have seen the last
boyfriend.
Update. Yeah, for sure.
I've got a chart here on all that. And look what the bottom says there. Can you read that? For those who are watching along at home, AD, Alzheimer's disease.
So your finger was over it.
My finger's over it. I was trying to look through the paper, trying to be clever, but obviously I wasn't. Is that right?
Yeah, autism.
Autism?
I did this with our Alzheimer's podcast too, AD, because it's also autism disease.
Of course.
Alzheimer's, Alzheimer's.
And women get more Alzheimer's than men. It's one of the things women get more of than men. There's not many.
No, there's not a lot. Not a lot.
So men get more diseases than women. Unfortunately, we live less time. But Alzheimer's is one that affects more women.
Yeah.
Cancer.
So memory processing and repair.
Oh, yeah,
that's
absolutely.
part of it with the estrogen. So therefore comes in that memory loss and that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
And bone growth maintenance, of course.
Oh, yeah, bone.
Protection of the bones.
So, all right. So that's estrogen. What about progesterone, the other hormone that women lose? What's that
progesterone, it regulates thyroid function.
Yep.
Estrogen regulation, so myelin formation as well, so the myelin sheath. And then they both together drive, bone health, fat burning. It's a really big one. Libido.
That's important,
Yeah, both.
Because progesterone's made when your egg ovulates, and that's when you typically get this big spike of progesterone in the last half of your cycle.
Yeah.
Hey, if you're not ovulating,
you're
not getting that beautiful spike of progesterone.
Exactly.
Damn it.
And progesterone is the very calming hormone as well. So it's it's GABAergic.
GABAergic.
So it helps to produce that GABA in the brain, which is very calming on the nervous system, which becomes really important when we lose it, which is a lot of times why we can impact your sleep.
Yes.
One of the big reasons, because you're losing that calming neurotransmitter, so you have a lot more stress and the nervous system is more reactive. So higher cortisol levels really impact your sleep. So that's a big one for that as well.
Yeah.
So all of those, imagine the opposite of all of those things. So they're all the things that are now happening when you don't have particularly the estrogen.
Yep.
So you can see how impactful it can be throughout your whole body.
Now also testosterone declines, but it's going to, I hope people understand something. It declines a little bit, but estradiol declines dramatically. So you end up with a relatively too high testosterone. Yeah,
that ratio, as we said, is completely out. So you don't want to have too high testosterone.
No, I mean, men still have estradiol.
Yeah, and women need to have testosterone.
Yep.
Because it helps with muscle mass. It helps with bone strength.
Yep.
It's good for that motivation and drive, cognition. big part of it, and mood stability, which a lot of women might say they mood changes.
Well, testosterone helps with mood stability, but if you've got lack of estrogen, you've got very androgenizing a woman.
Yes, and you can actually have, and these are what testosterone does in the female body. So if you have lower levels or too high levels, as we said at the beginning, that's when you have issues. So it helps with libido, obviously. It helps support energy production, and it does contribute to body composition.
Yeah.
So again, you don't want too much or too little. It's kind of like a Goldilocks type of a hormone in females.
But as menopause, you get a relatively increase of testosterone to estrogen ratio.
Yeah.
And it's where women become a bit more less hourglassy, as you said, more apple shape or android shape, is it, I think? And that's like if I just decided to stack on weight now, I'd put it on my guts.
Yeah.
I wouldn't get a big bum because I've got a skinny ass already and I've got shit ass. And, it's like there's nothing there. But with women, they have a more rounder figure around the gluteus maximus, and they have breasts, but because of the estrogen. But without that, that's
they tend to lose their butt, so that a lot of women can get really catabolism in their legs and their butt, and then get a bigger belly. So they get sort of that really wasted look on their legs, and they lose their butt altogether, but they get a really big belly. And that can be just a driver of hair loss, which can be another issue postmenopausally, is your hair can fall out a lot more because estrogen helps with healthy hair, and also high testosterone. If you're converting that to DHT, then you can have more of that androgenic.
That's dihydrotestosterone for those playing at home. Now, okay, I'm a man. I get all those things, right? I'm slightly thinning in the skull, slightly.
You're doing pretty good for your age.
But you know what? It's like I get that, and I'll get a bit thick around the waist. And as a male, we don't seem to. That's just like life for us. But for a woman to lose hair. If a woman had male pattern baldness like I do, that would be devastating.
It's awful, yeah. I mean, a lot of my hair fell out years ago when I had a huge stress in life.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And your hair's gorgeous now, by the way.
It's all growing back. It's definitely not as thick as it used to be, but it was horrendous. When a woman losing her hair is like awful for females. So traumatizing for a lot of women. So because that's kind of the epitome of femininity is their hair. So for a woman to lose her hair is a lot. I mean, no, not to downplay men losing their hair, because that can also be a factor.
Please downplay.
But it's more acceptable, I guess.
It's not that bad. You just get bald.
Yeah. So
this is the recession you have to have. It's just like, but it's very, very common. Probably, I'm 55. Probably 50% of men my age are thinning in the hair. Maybe more. Like significantly thinning, like me. And so it's like, it's just like part of us. And it's almost a bit weird for a man to have dark, black, thick hair when they're in there. Not that it doesn't look right, but it doesn't look normal.
My dad did. His hair didn't go grey till he was well into his late 60s.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really have any grey hair.
I've been married for Beck for 10 years, so my grace.
I didn't. On my mum's side, they were white when they were early 20s.
Really?
A whole lot. Yeah, didn't get that gene, thank God.
But see, mum's got white hair in her 20s.
Well, she always coloured it. But my mum and her brothers and my grandparents on her side all were white in their like Snow White in their early 20s and on. Mum was white by the time she was 21.
I was going to say a wildly inappropriate joke then.
She wouldn't know. Yeah, I'll beat you to it.
How did you know? How did she know she was white hair?
She didn't know. Yeah.
Nick's mother is
blind.
I was going to say visually impaired. I was trying to be more
blind. I don't know.
Yeah, but she does joke about it. And
she jokes about it. She loves it. Yeah. Right. So okay. But anyway, your grey hair can be a factor for people. But yes, androgenic alopecia, as we said. So
yeah, that's devastating.
Yeah, and then. So testosterone changes as well, either too high or too low. It can be a factor as well. Yeah. So a lot of women they get put on testosterone treatment.
Yes,
it can make things a lot worse if they're not monitored right, because they can already have high testosterone and they get
relatively high. Yeah,
they'll go see their GP and say, well, I have really low libido, have no motivation, all this sort of stuff. And they go testosterone,
absolutely,
and it can be the worst thing. So you really need to measure all your levels, really look closely at everything before you start thinking about that.
I find it a bit strange that women can get testosterone easier than men can from doctors. Yeah, largely. There's a big stigma with men getting testosterone.
Well, that's funny because my argument is always with HRT for women who choose to do that is it's such a big thing. But for a male, it's like if a male's losing has low testosterone, it's like, yep, TRT straight away. Get them on testosterone.
In America,
no
they
question
do.
about it.
Yeah.
It's like you can't have a man feeling terrible, but a female, because they're losing their hormones, well, that's just part of life.
Part of
just
life,
deal with it. So maybe it's not like that so much anymore, but this is a little bit of a stigma that a man had, God forbid, a man that would have low testosterone and have to deal with it. I'll probably get shot for that from some of the men. Maybe I'm generalising, but it used to be quite a big factor.
Yeah,
so
I know.
In the States, well, in the States they do use a lot more hormonal therapy.
Well,
than
I've been to a lot of conferences in the A4M, which is the anti-aging, anti-Americans, a lot of A's, 4 of them, and it's a society of doctors that treat people largely, among other things, but look at their health holistically. And what they presume is that, okay, what's a man's healthy testosterone range? It's like in Australia, it's 10 to 30. Yeah. So we want to keep you at 25. So even if you're 55 years old, my testosterone should be 25 nanomoles per litre. And so they titrate people with testosterone, and same with women. Yeah. And so they keep their hormones at that level. And gee whiz, I have to, some of the women that spoke that were in their 70s that were given hormone replacement therapy, bioidentical, and were taking it to, it's like, oh my God, you look good.
Yeah, because you age. So that's why a lot of women in their 50s, they start to age, their age accelerates because they're losing all these sort of anti-aging hormones essentially. Yeah. So, the skin changes and the hair and everything changes, and you really do age a lot quicker. So in America, there's a lot, and I follow a lot of practitioners over there, females that they promote a lot of these bioidentical hormones. They look amazing.
They look pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah, so in this country,
it's a bit different here. It's different. There's a stigma.
Governing bodies that are a little bit tougher on it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've never, I get testosterone checked every few years, but as soon as it starts getting low, and I am treating it with natural medicines, so my hormones are pretty good actually. They're 19.
It's pretty good, Steve.
Good for an old fart.
Good for an old
fart. So I'm pretty good with that. But, would I want more? Of course I want more, everyone wants more. But it's very interesting. And this is quite devastating for a woman. We don't want to make it about men, but you're right about this testosterone things. Now, I want to ask you about probably one of there's 2 really bad symptoms that I see that I think are the worst 2 for women, and you can totally disagree, but it's hot flushes and weight gain. Now, I want to talk about hot flushes first because we've got some interesting papers on that. Yeah. So what are the real drivers of hot flushes in women?
Well, this is really interesting because people just seem to think it's just the drop in estrogen, and that's it. It's causing the body to be unable to regulate the temperature, so you get these flushes. But I don't believe that.
Good.
Because, and look, there is papers to say that, but I also have theories on it. Because if that was the case, every single woman that went through menopause would have hot flushes, and not every woman does.
That's right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
They don't.
So so a lot of the flushing comes from the sugar dysregulation.
Yeah.
And the increase in the sort of more of a an insulin resistant type picture.
Yeah.
It's the blood sugars. So if your blood sugars, when you go through menopause, obviously the estrogen goes down. Our blood sugars then become wildly imbalanced.
Yeah.
And then our lifestyle factors really drive that, because if you had maybe a poor diet or a high carb diet, or you liked a bit of sugar, you're high stress or that sort of thing, previously the estrogen would kind of buffer that to a degree as far as your blood sugars. But when you lose the estrogen, the blood sugars then become wildly, out of control. So that creates the flushes. So if women, if they're having flushes, start to take note of your diet, and we're going to talk about other factors that can impact your blood sugar as well. But if you have a high carbohydrate or sugars and things like that, and then you're flushing, then that's really that's a big connection. So getting the blood sugar balanced is a huge part of reducing or eliminating hot flushes. So
absolutely, you should raise that. I was at on Saturday. It's now Monday if we're recording this. So 2 days ago, I was at a meeting with the 4 Drive Club I'm in, and there was a lady there, and she was about my age, and she said, "I've just been through menopause," and she said she put on 16 kilograms.
Yeah, it's a lot of weight, isn't it? In 2 years, wasn't it? Or something?
Yeah, 2 years. She said she looked quite heavy. She said the key words, "But I've done nothing different."
Yes. Yeah. Yes, because you go more into a more metabolically imbalanced state. So, and that's why, and that's such a common thing that people say, women say, is I haven't changed anything, but I'm suddenly putting on all this weight, having all these issues, and I haven't changed anything. And that's the problem. They haven't changed anything unless they have lived a really healthy, balanced lifestyle. But there's always something underlying, whether it be higher stress or something underlying, because flushing, not everyone has it. Not every woman has it. And I've seen women that don't have it. I don't have it, so I've never had it. So it's not purely estrogen. So.
Well, it's funny what you say. You never had it. Now, I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but
let's just say I know a lot about menopause, Steve.
Okay,
let's just say that.
I know we've spoken off camera, but it's very interesting because like this lady, I won't mention her name. But she didn't look well at all. She said, I've got energy and all, because she listened to our podcast.
Yeah, right.
She said, no, you're great on the podcast. She said, Nicole's shit, but you put up for
standard. Really.
She actually loved.
I hear that all the time.
She likes you, And I went, oh, really? No, I didn't know.
Surprising.
I said, no, she's the talent of the mob. I'm the looks. No, I didn't say that.
That's true. You are the looks.
No, I'm just lying. But
looks
yeah,
and the brains, you got it all.
But she was like a fan, and she said, I just can't work it out, because she's done nothing different. And my brain went, that's the problem.
That's the problem, yeah.
It's because you've lost these beautiful hormones that blessed you for years through no fault of yourself.
Yeah.
It's not blaming her or anything. She just ran out of eggs and lost all those hormones, and all those things you went through with estrogen are now worse than what they were before the menopause. She's still got a bit of estrogen, but nowhere near enough.
Nowhere enough. We'll talk about that.
She said she even grabbed her guts and said, I'll put all this weight and, like all around her waist.
Around the waist, yeah.
And it's like, oh, boy.
Yeah. So so that's, and we'll talk about diet at the end, but diet is a huge one, particularly with the hot flushes. You want to make sure that your blood sugar is balanced throughout the day.
Right.
So, the diet needs to change to a degree.
Yes.
So to fit the new hormonal profile that you have, because it's essentially like a second puberty. So you remember girls when they go through puberty, like they'll look crazy. Like ask my mum, she hated me when I was through puberty, because you have the wild the hormone surges, so the mood changes. They're gaining body fat. There's just lots of different things happening. So it's kind of the same thing over again in reverse. So your body goes through all these changes. So you then have to adjust your lifestyle to fit the new hormonal profile, because it doesn't work what you've done previously.
No.
So diet is a big one. So managing blood sugars is a huge factor. And that includes diet, but it also includes stress management, which we'll talk about how that can be really negatively impactful.
Right.
And sleep and anything that dysregulates your blood sugar, you have to try and clean that up.
Now, dysregulating blood sugar is one thing, and that can lead to breakdown, weight gain. But also we've found that women increase their appetite after weight. And they've got a great paper here. Where it basically is a nice little flow chart. I'll hold it up to the camera so we know what we're doing. But basically what that means is your muscles break down as you age, because you're losing the anabolic estradiol and you're losing all sorts of progesterone, which is androgen, and you're losing testosterone a little bit. So your muscles break down. And you release this signal called FGF21, or fibroblast growth factor 21. And that's a hormone that tells you, hey, my muscles are breaking down, feed me.
Yeah.
So it says increases your appetite.
Yeah.
And in this paper it says protein appetite, but there's no such thing.
There's no such thing, no.
Appetite.
The body wants the protein, and we'll talk about that. But obviously you don't go, well, that doesn't go, well, just give me protein. It just goes, gives me food, hoping that's protein.
Yeah. So, and I, when I was getting migraines quite badly, I was first thing I was given antihistamine medication. Histamine causes vasodilation in the brain, so antihistamine triggers. And my God, my appetite went through the roof. And it was like, I just eat and I'm hungry. I'm really physiologically hungry. And these poor women that suffer this, they probably don't realise they're eating more, and they might say things like, oh, I love my food, I love, and it's like all of a sudden they're eating excess, but they don't think they are, because they're eating to their appetite. It's a dysregulation.
Right. Yeah, and they don't realise it. A lot of them don't realise they're eating more, because they might be eating the same types of food and maybe healthy foods, but more of it, but they're not getting the protein in there, which is what the body needs. So,
and what we find is women and men become less active as we age generally.
Yeah.
So maybe, menopause with a lack of energy, lack of sleep, all these things counting against them, they may be less likely to get up in the morning, go for that walk, go to the gym, go for a swim, because they're also self-conscious. There could be lots of things going on in their life, and it's really quite bad. But the weight gain is quite scary. But there's also other things that go on with menopausal weight gain there too. There's some amazing things that go on their body there.
So we're going to talk about menopause. So I'm going to do this a little bit differently this time.
Okay,
so
good.
I'm going to talk about treatments for each as we go.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Otherwise,
all right.
we're going to be doing it at the end. So just little tips along the way. So hot flushes.
Yeah.
Obviously get the blood sugars balanced. So diet, lower carbohydrate, not no carbohydrate. We'll talk about specifically diets at the end as well. Berberine is really good. I love berberine. It's one of my favorites.
You love it.
So good. It's really good for balancing blood sugar.
Yeah.
It's good for metabolic imbalances and things like that. Inositol, magnesium. Samaria's thistle.
Good old milk thistle.
Yeah, milk thistle and berberine together is really good for menopause because it helps with the blood sugar regulation. It helps with the liver, which there's liver changes we'll talk about, and it helps with bone rebuilding with the
Samaria's
thistle.
Of course it does.
So it's a really good combo but specifically for hot flushes, it's good at balancing those blood sugars.
Of course it would be.
So there's some little tips for that one.
That's a good one. And you've also got on there saffron.
Saffron's really good as well. It's anti-inflammatory. It's very good for the brain, but it's also good for blood sugar and everything as well. So it's a really good one. It's more expensive herb.
Slightly more.
Yeah, but you'll find that as we talk, some of these double up. So there's not different herbs for every single thing. They do have multiple actions, which is what I like.
Yep.
So, so we'll talk about night sweats, and then we'll talk more about the weight gain, which is what everyone wants to know about.
Yeah. Okay, so night sweats.
Yeah, that can be another thing as well. So people think that you're flushing at night, but it's different. So a hot flush and night sweats are two different things. The hot flush is more, as we said, the blood sugar dysregulation for the most part. And I'll tell you why a lot of people think it's estrogen, because a lot of women go on the hormonal therapy and they say, my hot flushes have stopped. I'm like, yes, of course, because you've brought your estrogen up, which helps to stabilise your blood sugars.
Yep.
So that's sort of the mechanism there.
Right.
Night sweats are, there's a lot of women to the point where they have to change in the middle of the night because they sweat so much. It's adrenal stuff.
Right.
So any sort of night sweating is coming from adrenal issues, which is really common in menopause because, as we said, we're losing the progesterone, which is helping our nervous system, balance our nervous system. And we also have high stress. And then the adrenals are taking up the load of producing estrogen because the adrenals will produce a small amount of estrogen, nowhere near the levels that the ovaries do. So if they're pumping out stress hormones, because women are now working full time, some of the breadwinners are looking after children, they're looking after the house, so their stress is through the roof. So this is why stress makes menopausal symptoms way worse because there's too much load on them. So the night sweats can be driven by that adrenal maladaptation, the cortisol rises and fluctuations, and then the sugar levels come into play a little bit there as well. So that obviously disrupts their sleep, which increases their cortisol, which increases the stress, which creates more adrenal issues, which then creates more issues with night sweats and things like that as well. So
and it suppresses sex hormones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Which you want to hang on to with both hands.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's terrible.
So
how would you treat that?
So nervous system, obviously, stress management we've talked about so many times that comes into play, and that's super, super important in menopause to manage your stress as much as you can, stress reduction activities. And then things like your B vitamins, magnesium is really important, vitamin C for the adrenals as well. And then withanias, rhamanias, holy basil I love.
That's a good one. Yeah. It's funny, I saw that listed there and I went, that's a really
holy
good idea.
Holy basil's great, or Tulsi is the other name for that. If you don't,
is it?
Yeah, Tulsi. Yeah. L-theanine we've talked about many times, helps to blunt cortisol rise. Passion flower and skullcap, really nice. Glycine. Nice. So there's lots of different herbs and nutrients you can use for adrenal health to support that, to reduce your night sweats.
That's really good because those herbs are great. And what do you think about sage or something like that?
Yeah, sage is really good for night sweats. And the other thing that's, I know this is more for sleep, Ziziphus is a very good, they call it the menopausal hormone. It's menopausal herb, sorry, not herb.
They do too, yeah.
Yeah, because it's really good for sleep dysregulation.
Yep.
So, and the sweats as well, the night sweats, Ziziphus.
Good one.
Do anything with Ziziphus in it?
they're really good herbs for all sorts of things.
Yeah,
black cohosh is another one too. That's
black
used as
cohosh
well.
can be quite good. I haven't put black cohosh in any of this, funnily enough.
Yeah.
But black cohosh traditionally is used for menopausal
There's a bit of
symptoms.
data
It can be quite good.
Yeah.
So now we move on to the one everyone wants to know about is the weight gain.
The big one, and we'll
How
call
do we
it.
stop the weight gain?
Yeah. Now this is scary because weight gain causes a myriad of health problems.
Yeah.
From joints to heart to brain to everything. So women who go through menopause tend to typically put on weight. It's not a rule.
Yeah.
It's not a golden rule, but it's something that, and it's also like we're going to talk about the biochemistry, but also we're thinking that a woman is not sleeping as well. Their appetite's dysregulated. But I mean, what is going on with women? Because typically they do put on weight.
Yeah, and there's a lot of factors involved in this, and that's why it can be so hard to get it under control for a lot of women. But as we talked about, estrogen is anabolic.
Yeah.
So it helps with obviously keeping our muscle mass. The more muscle mass we have, the better more metabolically healthy we are. Helps to improve insulin sensitivity. So there's those factors that we lose that. We get catabolic, we're losing our muscle, therefore our metabolic, our ability to balance our blood sugars with muscle contraction reduces, along with the increase in the insulin resistance because of the lack of hormones. So there's all of that.
God.
There's the appetite factor.
Yep.
So this is interesting. So the increase in FSH, as we said,
Follicle stimulating hormone,
it increases obviously significantly in menopause. And their receptors, FSH receptors, are found all throughout the body, including the fat cells.
Oh, no.
So they have a bit of a role in causing the fat cells to actually increase in size. So when you lose the estrogen and the FSH goes up, you're actually growing your fat cells bigger.
FSH goes through the roof during menopause.
It does, yeah. So that's one reason. So increasing the adipocyte size. Increases lipogenesis.
The growth of new fat.
Yep. Yeah. Reduces leptin sensitivity.
Leptin regulates appetite. So
that's another factor for being hungry.
Yep.
Increased insulin resistance in peripheral tissues. So we're storing more fat and we have less ability to burn fat. So it's pretty not a really good recipe.
That's bad.
And then a reduction in energy expenditure. So estrogen plays a role in mitochondrial health and function. And we've talked about how mitochondria produce our ATP, which is our energy. So, you get really tired in menopause. That's because mitochondrially they're not working as well. And then there's other drivers which talk about which impact your mitochondria as well. So you're not producing enough energy. So therefore you're tired. You're also producing more fat. You're not able to burn the fat that you're producing. So there's all these factors going on.
Relative high testosterone and cortisol. And it's like, that's pretty much everything. Yeah. Every single way that you can put on fat, it seems like that's, as far as I know, almost all the mechanisms.
All the mechanisms. And then on top of that, you've got the stress because you're feeling awful and you're putting on weight. So the cortisol is then contributing again in that stress response and causing your blood sugar to imbalance, causing inflammation and causing more weight gain there as well.
Well, it could only be worse if you're not going to tell me that hopefully the fat goes to your bum and boobs, does it?
No, as we all know, it doesn't. It goes to the middle. And that's the biggest thing. I can't get the weight off my middle. It's just going on to my middle. So when fat accumulates around the middle, which it does in menopause for a lot of women, the fat itself becomes dysfunctional and produces inflammatory cytokines and free fatty acids. They push through the liver, which causes changes to the liver. So you can develop fatty liver, which is a really common postmenopausal
it's called
as well.
NALF, non-alcoholic fatty liver.
That's right.
Disease. There we go.
Exactly. Also, the fat around the organs, it actually creates a lot of this bigger stomach as well. So you're accumulating a lot more fat around the organs, which is dangerous.
That's dangerous. That's what men get typically.
Yeah. And then so all this fat's being pushed through the liver. So it's impacting the liver, which is then impacting the pancreas as well, because that's all part of that, which then impacts your sugars further, creates more insulin resistance. So therefore, it's just a disaster, soupy disaster, really, essentially, isn't it?
It's a disaster. That's really disastrous. Now, okay, how do we treat that? I mean, where do you start?
Where do you start? Well, again, diet is a big factor, which we'll talk about at the end. I like berberine again here.
Yeah.
Because one, it's balancing the blood sugars. anti-inflammatory, which we're going to talk about next, inflammation.
Yeah.
But it's reducing inflammation to a degree, and it's helping the gut, which we'll talk about because there's also gut microbiome changes that happen postmenopausally as well. So berbeриne's a really good one, and then exercise and diet, and we'll talk about those two at the end as well.
We will talk at the end? Okay, good, because they're super important.
They're big ones.
All right.
So inflammation, Steve, can also contribute to that weight gain.
Well, I got that paper there on the inflammation of the brain, but it's inflammation throughout the body.
Systemically, yeah. So it can be driven by a toxic burden, which can be a lot higher as we get older. We can accumulate a lot more toxins, heavy metals and things like that, viruses, lots of stuff, mycotoxins. Poor gut health, which we'll talk about because there's a lot of changes in the gut. High insulin, as we said, high stress. So this can all contribute to inflammation.
Yep.
Inflammation then impacts our mitochondrial function, which produces our energy. So we then produce less energy.
Wow.
Inflammation also causes weight loss resistance. So the body will produce more fat to sort of, keep anything sort of toxic away from the organs.
Oh, yeah. And
So
you might get achy joints and therefore you don't want to exercise.
Exactly. Achy joints is another one. So the inflammation is significant there, and also the loss of estrogen, which helps with lubrication of the joints. You lose that. So a lot of women goes, I get really sore, creaky joints, stiff joints. Inflammation is a big driver there. So you want to make sure you're getting all your anti-inflammatories in there via diet. And then your curcumin obviously is a really good anti-inflammatory. Boswellia is a really good one as well. Fish oils are really good. I prescribe fish oils all the time for postmenopausal women. Quercetin can be good, vitamin C, ginger, magnesium, those sort of things. So anti-inflammatory is really important.
That's a huge one. That's really important. Of course, inflammation causes all sorts of problems throughout the body.
So many. So gut health, Steve.
It's everywhere. It's like in every single disease that we talk about, it's gut health.
Yeah.
And what has gut health got to do with menopause, though? People are going to go, what are you talking about, Nick?
Yeah, and a lot of women, when they go through menopause, they say, I'm having a lot of gut issues and bloating or things like that. So the sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone, help support microbial diversity in the gut.
Ah, yes.
So you actually lose diversity.
Yeah.
And we talked so many times the gut stuff about the more
Shannon
diversity.
index is how you measure it,
Better. They produce anti-inflammatory compounds and things like that. So you want to have good amounts.
Yeah.
So that then can create a bit of dysbiosis in the gut. So you have sort of less of these, less diversity allows for more of these more inflammatory microbes to overgrow, which can then contribute further to inflammation, immune dysregulation, all of that sort of thing. And then the microbiome of postmenopausal women shows a lot more pro-inflammatory bacteria.
Oh, God.
Which is probably because of the reduction in the more
diversity.
Yeah, the healthy bacteria.
Wow.
And they can produce LPS, which is
lipopolysaccharides, inflammatory.
That can then breach the epithelial barrier of the gut. Go systemic and then cause inflammation. And the other bad news is that estrogen protects the intestinal epithelial cells of the gut lining. So you lose that, you get a lot more gut hyperpermeability or leaky gut. So that's really common as well. So then more leaky gut allows obviously more pathogen and compounds to go through to circulation and cause more inflammation.
Right.
Here's an interesting one, Steve. So plasma intestinal fatty acid binding protein.
Oh, my God.
Well, I'll call it IFAB for short. But anyway, that increases, and that's actually a marker of inflammation.
Oh, God.
So that actually goes up in gut inflammation. And then the lipopolysaccharide binding protein and CD14, which is an inflammatory cytokine, they all go up.
So you just get systemic inflammation.
Yeah, systemic inflammation, gut environment, super inflamed. So there's so many. And the other thing is the loss of short-chain fatty acids. So the loss of those
good for you too. You don't want to lose them.
They will reduce with menopause as well. So a lot of times these gut dysregulation just happens because of our loss of hormones, aside from everything else, the poor diet and everything as well. So those changes to the microbiome then shift you to a more inflammatory state, as we said. You can have more dysbiosis and other issues in the gut, which we all know can create weight loss resistance or weight gain. So there's also that then contributes to the weight gain. And then that can also contribute to the mood disorders because we're not producing as many neurotransmitters because of the gut changes as well. And then absorption of your nutrients like your calciums can go down. So therefore it's affecting your bones as well. So any sort of gut stuff is really impacting a lot more than just than the gut. So that's really good news.
Oh, gee, it's like this is a real syndrome.
Yeah, it's
real.
There's not really any systems that aren't affected
No,
by it, really.
from the brain to your bowels to your everywhere.
To your liver and your gallbladder as well. So that's another factor.
Is pancreas involved?
Pancreas, yeah. The liver can decrease in volume by up to 40%.
Oh my God, I didn't know that.
So that then impacts how the liver will go through its detox channels, its clearance. It won't be able to clear toxins and things as well. So including estrogen, which the little amount that we produce can become a problem if it's recirculating and getting into high amounts. And that can cause more fat storage around the waist and that sort of thing as well. And then the gallbladder is also affected.
Oh, that's everything. Yeah, gallbladders are mainly affected.
Yeah. You produce less bile when you lose your estrogen. And the bile can become stickier and sludgier. Yeah. So therefore you can end up with stones, so gallstones. Your LDL levels, again, will shoot up because you need that bile to emulsify and move the cholesterol out as well. And then you can have bacterial overgrowth, so small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, because the bile comes in and stops its antimicrobial. It does, so then that contributes to the gut stuff as well.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so all of those digestive organs really are affected significantly. So
you don't think of that.
No.
You know, people think of flushes and put on a bit of weight, but you don't think of your whole digestive organs.
No. Yeah.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It's a lot. Yeah.
Well, how do we treat all that?
Well, yes, we treat all that. So diet, again, you want to make sure really that you're not having any inflammatory foods at all, no sugars, no refined carbohydrates and things like that, and really supporting that gut microbiome with prebiotics is really important. So things like galacto-oligosaccharides, so GOS is a really good one. Because it also helps to increase secretory IgA levels in the gut, which is for your immune system, and it helps with that gut hyperpermeability. Yeah. And then things like partly hydrolyzed guar gum or fructooligosaccharides, so FOS. There's some really good prebiotics that you want to get in there, some probiotics that are really anti-inflammatory and help with sort of that leaky gut sort of environment. Really, and a lot of fibers and things like that to feed up that beneficial bacteria as well.
Polyphenols and all the good stuff.
Polyphenols, all that sort of thing.
Wow.
So you really need to be hyper focused on your gut health and what you're
incredible, isn't it?
There. Yeah.
I think the only thing you haven't mentioned that's not affected is thyroid.
That's affected too.
Oh, geez, Nick.
Yeah, that's affected.
Really?
Too. Yeah, your thyroid is affected as well.
Oh, what happened to the old thyroid, the poor thing?
So obviously the inflammation that a lot of these factors can create then impacts the thyroid function, the stress, so the high cortisol levels, which is sort of like not regulated as well, that then impacts our T3, T4,
it turns it into
T3.
reverse T3, which like a handbrake.
Exactly. So instead of converting T4 to T3, it will convert to reverse T3, which is inactive. So therefore that affects your metabolic health. So you put on more weight, which is more inflammatory, which then impacts the thyroid. So then it's just, again, these are all like vicious cycles.
Low thyroid can cause depression, anxiety, blah, 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 blah.
Low gut motility, which then impacts the gut further.
Constipation.
All that sort of thing. So
Holy mackerel.
That's also impacted. So you want to make sure your thyroid is supported as well. So we've talked about thyroid, herbs and nutrients before, but zinc, seleniums, vitamin A, N-acetylcysteine, inositol, really good for the thyroid as well.
That is a good one.
So so that's all impacted.
Geez, Nick. So what organs aren't? I know the skin's impacted too.
The skin's impacted because obviously the estrogen keeps your skin nice and moist and plump. So that's when women can start to get more wrinkles because they don't have the estrogen.
Well, they lose the fat out of their face.
Yeah, so they find that you get kind of that sullen, that sort of drawn look, and then more wrinkles and saggy skin. Your skin starts to sag.
Jeez.
So much fun.
Jeez.
Yes.
So, we've got sleep, we've got everything going on here, from bone loss to muscle loss to skin loss to thyroid disorders to gut disorders, not to mention mental health. And I think the mental health's one of the worst ones.
It is. It's a really big one, yeah.
It's like everything is affected.
Everything. So, women going through menopause, a lot of people just think, women, it's just crazy. Yeah. Well, I mean, these are the reasons why women can become a little bit imbalanced and have issues because of all these factors.
Wow.
So stress we've talked about. We can skip
Shrinking
over that.
brains, you know,
stress we know is a really
sleep.
big one. You have to manage your stress because, as we said, the adrenals take over the production of a little bit of estrogen.
Yeah.
And then if you have that chronic stress, then you're going to have lower DHEA levels. DHEA helps to produce hormones,
sex hormones,
including progesterone. So that's going to be even worse. Then, you know, you're more inclined to have the blood sugar dysregulation and the inflammation because the cortisol is then, you know, unopposed, all that sort of thing.
Jeez.
So stress management becomes vitally important. Sleep is talked about because of the loss of progesterone, increased cortisol, the blood sugar dysregulation, and then if you're having night sweats, that all impacts sleep.
Yep.
So then your sleep becomes dysregulated, which then impacts all of those issues again and again. It's another cycle, vicious cycle.
Okay, so
yeah, and then your bone loss is a really big one as well. We've talked about, you know, women are aware that that's a really big one. And
massive
so,
one.
you know, one of the first things I recommend is weight bearing or strength or resistance exercise.
Oh, that's important.
That's probably the most important thing,
Yeah.
I think, because it really has been a lot of research to show that it's really beneficial for bone remodeling and that sort of thing. So you need to get a good load on though. You can't, you know, women that just do the 1 and 2 kilo dumbbells and home stuff, it doesn't. You really need to actually stress the bone so that it will remodel. So, but that's a really big one. And then, you know, all your nutrients for your bone health. So your calcium, your vitamin D, your magnesium, your phosphorus, potassium, you know.
Coppers,
K2,
manganese, K2. K2's
really good, really good for bones, yeah. So that's really important. And then the brain changes, as we talked about earlier, that can cause a lot of issues with memory loss and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of stuff.
We have to give them some good news now.
Yeah, we do.
We have to tell people what diets we can do and some supplement ideas. Now, we've gone through some of the supplements, some of the herbs.
Yeah.
But what we need to talk about is diet and exercise. You mentioned weight-bearing exercise.
Yes.
And that's possibly, and I'm going to sort of be a little bit presumptuous, but a lot of women will be resistant against resistance exercise. So let's dispel that myth. Firstly, you do resistance exercise, you look like a man, you get big muscles. Does that happen?
That doesn't happen. No,
it doesn't.
And I think a lot of, this is what I've seen in clinic, this is probably gross generalization, I guess, to a degree, but I also when I was working in the gyms, a lot of women prefer cardiovascular exercise, cardio. I'd either go for a run or a big walk or something with them, lift weights.
Or keep myself active. And they have these flippant remarks, but you really need to watch yourself when you're menopause. You have to be a little bit more serious about your health.
You do, yeah. So women who are doing, and this is the other thing. So women, they putting on all this weight through menopause, so they go, I'm going to eat a lot less and then I'm going to exercise a lot more, which then creates more of stress. Like it activates that stress response, which makes things worse. You're not feeding your metabolic system. You're not feeding your thyroid. You're not doing all the things. So, but exercise-wise, strength training should be the foundation, and you build everything else around that because you want to protect your bones. And also, as we said, you lose muscle at a really accelerated rate postmenopausally because you don't have the estrogen, which is anabolic, helping to maintain muscle mass. Wow. So you have to work a lot harder to maintain muscle mass.
Yep.
Even grow muscle, you have to work really hard. But the strength training, you need that. So if you're losing muscle, as we said, it's impacting your metabolic function. It's creating more of an insulin resistant type picture.
Yep.
So strength training, basis of everything, has to be heavy. Work your way up to it. Obviously, don't walk into a gym and start trying to lift really heavy weights because your joints won't manage it, all of that sort of thing. If you have joint pain, you have to sort of work on your inflammation and all of that sort of thing before you lift heavy, but work with a trainer who knows how to help you with all that sort of stuff. But strength training and then cardiovascular training is really important, but not too much. So because it's been shown to be really beneficial for cardiovascular health and for our arteries, so the arterial stiffness or hardening of the arteries is really important. But believe it or not, HIIT training is really good.
Right.
And even I would say to a menopausal woman, you don't go out and do HIIT training every day. Don't, because it's just going to tax your adrenals way too much and you're just going to make yourself worse.
That's interesting because there'll be some women that go, oh my God, I'm putting on weight, I'm freaking out and I'm going to go train every morning at, do HIIT training at
even those F45s and things like that.
I was going to say F45, but I thought, are they still around?
Well, I don't know, but that's style of training. And that's not HIIT training. People might think that's HIIT training. It's so not. I mean, HIIT training is like, if you really
super intense.
Yeah, it's intense. If you really did HIIT training, you'd know about it because you're going from as hard as you can, and not many people will actually do that. So, but that sort of more prolonged exercise, so that 45 minutes to an hour of that cardio / you're not lifting really heavy weights and those sort of things anyway. But short hit sessions, 15, 20 minutes twice a week of going hard.
Right.
But again, you need to work your way up to it, and you need to be in a balanced, more balanced state so your body can handle the stress of that.
Yeah, gotcha.
But short and sharp, really good for cardiovascular health. Even if you can start with, a jog 20 times a week, 20 minutes twice a week.
Just start with 20 times, build up to 40 times a week.
Exactly. But yeah, so you want a good balance there of your cardiovascular as well, but not overdoing the cardiovascular training. So that's super important with exercise, and nothing too taxing on the adrenals. So nothing that's going to increase your cortisol too much.
Right.
So, not long duration. Even if it's a jog, you don't jog for an hour because, again, that's too much of a stressor on the body and the joints and things.
It's a bloody stress on you.
Yeah,
It is.
For women, menopausal women, not the best option. No. So, exercise-wise, super important. And, don't overdo it is the biggest thing. But resistance training should be the foundation.
I love it.
And then diet.
What about diet? What's general guidelines?
So I generally say, because this is a good place for women to start, is the Mediterranean diet, because again, stood the test of time. It's high in fibre, which we need to bind up a lot of the.
So not full of spaghetti and that. Yeah.
So a lower carbohydrate Mediterranean style diet. So you're getting your protein in there, and protein again is king. So you want to make sure you're getting protein with each meal. We've talked about this many times.
Yep.
And then you're getting your fibre. You're getting your omegas from the fish. I'm not big on a lot of grains, and then menopausally you don't want to be doing too many carbohydrates, lower carbohydrates, not no carbohydrates, and more your whole foods like your vegetables and, your
good for
sweet
the gut.
potatoes and things like really good prebiotic and probiotic and probiotics in some of them. So that's kind of a really good sort of rounded diet to do. Ketogenic diets, a lot of people will tout ketogenic diets for women in menopause. Great, because they thrive on that. Yes, some women can.
Some do.
It's a high fat diet, ketogenic diet. So you've got to remember that the liver and the gallbladder have changed. So you may not be able to tolerate that amount of fat, even if it's good fat, because you don't have the bile production, you don't have the liver that's working really well. So if you don't do well on a ketogenic diet, that could be why. Some women do fine on it. So that higher fat may be a problem for you. So if you're going to do that, you really need to do really clean eating, like not general keto with the creams and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, cheese and that. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. So, and if you don't have gallbladder, which is really common for women in the 50+ age range, they've had it taken out, or not uncommon, then we wouldn't do keto because of the fat. You just can't. It's bile, and now it's
you need more
sludgy
protein because it's a moderate. It's not a higher protein diet. No, it's quite a lowish protein diet. The ketogenic diet. People think it's just all meat. So no, that's the carnivore diet.
No, it's not all meat at all. It's a high fat diet.
Yeah.
Plant-based diets again. Look, there's positives and negatives. They can be lower in protein if you're not on point and getting all your essential your amino acids, your non-essential amino acids, which you've got to do. Make sure you're getting that through the different foods.
Sure.
The B12 can be a factor. A lot of people on plant-based diets are B12 deficient, and that can impact your methylation, which then can impact your detoxification of the estrogens.
Hormones. Yeah, of course.
And we now in menopause are producing an estrogen that's a little bit more toxic.
The E16?
Yeah. So, and that's when we're talking about breast cancers and things like that.
Yeah.
It's the inability to detoxify these estrogens very well through the liver. And so if you're having methylation issues, and then possible nutrient deficiencies from plant-based diets if they're not balanced. So there's pros and cons there. But the lower carbohydrate Mediterranean style diet's a really good one for everyone to start. It's nice and safe.
I like it.
Works, yeah. And then phytoestrogen-rich foods has been shown to be relatively beneficial as well.
Yeah.
So phytoestrogens, they have like compounds, estrogen-like compounds, so they can be really beneficial. So there's isoflavones found in soybeans. There's lignans, which is one of my favourites. Flax seeds are one of my favourites in menopause.
Good.
And cormostans, which are found in sprouted beans.
Sprouted beans, love it.
Yeah, and then a lot of women think, phytoestrogens, don't take them because they build your estrogen up too much. So if you take them when you have a lot of estrogen, they will actually block the estrogen receptor, so it actually can reduce your estrogen.
Fills it up, yeah.
And then if you're post-menopause, you don't have as much estrogen, it actually can replace it.
Fill them, yeah.
It doesn't replace, it's not as strong as an estrogen, obviously, but it can help a little bit with hot flushes and things like that. The flax seeds are really good, I find, because they're high in fibre as well. They've got healthy fats and things like that. So phytoestrogens can be quite good for a lot of the symptoms, and soy isoflavones as well. Get a good quality soy, don't get the genetically modified, don't get a concentrate, get a whole soybean, that sort of thing. Some women can tolerate them well, some women can't. We don't have as many enzymes in our gut to break them down as, say, in the Asian population.
Yeah.
A better ability to break them down. But they can be something you can add into your diet as well.
Nice. Jeez.
Yeah.
And you've also got a lot of, you've talked a bit here about mind-body therapies. They're very important as well, aren't
really
they?
important. So all that stress management,
Yeah.
Meditation, all that sort of stuff, super, super important. Don't just brush it off, because now your body is in more of a stress-dominant state because you don't have those hormones to buffer that. You really will. And a lot of women say, I'm just so stressed all the time. Right? Any little thing, and I overreact with stress where I never used to, and that's because you don't have that buffer of your nervous system.
And it's real. It's real for them. And the scary thing about this is that every woman goes through this to a degree.
Yeah.
Some go, I had a few flushes one night.
Yeah, some women can skate through it.
Yeah.
And some women really struggle. And the ones that really struggle, that's when you have to look at these underlying factors. You can't just keep eating the same diet. You can't exercise or not exercise the same way. You can't, have to manage your sleep and all of these things. And it's actually, you really have to work at it. You can't just go, well, I just tried, or I'm just going to do HRT because it's all too hard. As we said before, HRT is not going to fix the problem.
No.
So it becomes you have to put this first. And a lot of women, you bring up children and they always put everyone else first. So this is the time where you have to put your own health first, because otherwise you're really you may really struggle through this.
It's scary. But look, get those tests, get those blood tests, FSH, see where you're at.
Yeah, get full blood tests, get your inflammatory markers, get your liver markers, obviously cholesterol, lipids, all that sort of thing. Get everything checked and see where you're at.
Yep.
So you can know where to start. But
eat better, exercise, particularly resistance. Look at those herbs, look at those supplements.
Yeah.
And take care of your whole body.
Yeah.
Incredible, Nick. Well, I think that's about all we've got time for.
Yeah, no, we rushed through the last bit. But,
I know. That's right. No, you
trying
did
to
well.
get it all. It's such a big subject.
Amazing topic. But anyway, we'll see everyone next week.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
See ya.
Bye.
Nicole.
Steve.
I have got an FAQ for you.
Ooh, okay.
It says, it's from YouTube. It says, hi, Steve and Nick. A friend recommended the podcast to me because the male host is gorgeous. Oh, sorry, it doesn't say that.
Does not say that.
No.
Only in your head, Steve.
And it has by far become my new number one go-to. It says that.
That's cool.
I'm really enjoying the content and how you explain everything. I have yearly colonoscopies due to being diagnosed with separated polypus syndrome. It's a really rare one, that one.
Yeah.
And each year, in the few days leading up to the colonoscopy, I need to follow an awful diet lacking no fibre. They give you a very bland fibre, so very bland diet, so it doesn't get through to your colon.
Yeah.
And I obviously have to do the bowel cleanse, which is drinking yucky magnesium stuff. Anyway, will this be disrupting my gut microbiome significantly? I always make sure I return to my diet rich. Nutrient-rich diets afterwards. I stuff that up. But yeah, does it affect the microbiome?
So once a year, colonoscopies once a year.
Yep.
So, look, and how long are the cleanses? How long do you have to do the diet for, did he say?
They say about 2 to 3 days, and it's a very bland white diet.
Yeah.
And because it doesn't form fibre, which means it clears your colon out.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you really clean it out.
You do really clean it out, yeah. Look, I think if you're doing it once a year, look, people are on poor diets that will do way worse things to your microbiome than this. But my suggestion would be, once you've done it, have the colonoscopy, get some prebiotic fibres in there. So maybe get some GOS, get some PHCG. They're my favourites. They're they're really well tolerated by a lot of people. And get your polyphenols in there and just pump up your prebiotics again.
Yep.
And just to bring those healthy beneficial bacteria back up.
Yep.
And just really focus on that for maybe a month afterwards.
Yeah, a month.
Really put those prebiotics in there.
Yep.
Probiotics to a degree, but prebiotics really do all the work.
Yeah, they do all the work.
They feed all the
I
good
totally
guys,
agree.
good guys.
Rich, colourful diets, exercise, very important for your microbiome, believe it or not. And, I think, look, it does affect it, but it'll grow back.
Yeah, just be really, and obviously you're really vigilant with that. But get onto those prebiotics; they're really great. GOS, even FOS, if you can tolerate it. So fructooligosaccharides, galacto-oligosaccharides, partly hydrolyzed guar gum, even inulin. Those types of things are really beneficial for the gut microbiome to feed it up. So,
good one. All right.
We have
you got one for me?
This one, let's see if this one says Steve. Hey, Steve and Nick, thank you for such an awesome podcast. Oh, cool. We're getting all the compliments today, Steve.
Oh, yeah.
Look forward to it every week. I've been battling hormonal acne for years, especially around my cycle. Are there specific foods or supplements that can help balance hormones and improve skin? Also, can you help me settle an argument with my partner? Does drinking more water help to hydrate dry skin?
Oh, there's two questions there. It's good. And it's so funny because, I just thought I'd read you out the first one. The second one, I'm writing a paper on this for
look at that.
medical paper on acne. And you call it hormonal acne, which is true. The hormones do play a role in it. But the thing that drives the androgens in women is insulin-like growth factor 1. Now, where does insulin-like growth factor 1 come from? It's found naturally in cow's milk, and it's also found when you increase your insulin levels. So what you need to do for an acne diet is to cut out any sort of refined carbohydrates, which is bad for you anyway, and cut out milk. Not dairy. You can have cheese, you can have yogurt. They don't have IGF-1 in it, but cow's milk does. So if a lot of Australians, if this is an Australian one, they eat a bowl of cereal for breakfast, that's the worst thing for acne. It's got refined carbohydrates and milk. And you might have a sandwich for lunch, disaster. So get rid of all that flour and all that sort of stuff. So that's absolutely what you need to get rid of hormonal acne. There are other treatments for, acne as well. But if you get the diet right, that's the best thing you can do. Also, zinc is very good, taking zinc supplements, and vitamin A supplements. In fact, the drug that you use to treat acne, a powerful drug, is called Roaccutane, is synthetic vitamin A.
It is.
So they're the things that will help you. And the second part of the question is, does drinking more water help hydrate the skin? Not greatly.
No.
Not greatly at all. If you want to, because you got to remember, if you want to hydrate the skin, you need to have something to attract the water there. And you might have heard of hyaluronic acid. That's a common topical thing, and that attracts water to that area. So drinking, because you've got plenty of water in your body if you want fatter cheeks. But if you rub your face with hyaluronic acid or take it orally, it will fill your face out and, increase your hydration in your skin.
Yeah. And I will add one more thing with the acne. If it's coming around your cycles, also check your progesterone levels.
Yeah, it's an androgen.
Progesterone, can be quite high, particularly depending on where in your cycle. So if it's sort of the 2 weeks leading up to your cycle, you start to notice maybe around the jawline, that sort of thing. Check your progesterone, could be really high. So
that's a good point.
Check that as well.
All right, that's great, Nick. See you next week.
See you guys.